At 23 years old, Chiamaka had never bathed herself, not once. Her beauty was legendary, but what her husband discovered on their wedding night would destroy their marriage and change her life forever. This is her story. The sun hadn't fully risen over the village of Umori, but the gossip had already begun its rounds like wildfire. Chiamaka, daughter of Mama Unya, stood before her mother's cracked mirror, admiring the flawless curve of her cheekbones and the deep brown of her eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of ancient queens. She was waiting for her mother to bring her bathing water, but something made her pause, not concern, not guilt, just the faint sound of women laughing outside. Maybe it was the sharpness in their voices, or maybe, just maybe, destiny had decided to play its hand. Chiamaka, her mother called from the backyard, struggling with a heavy bucket of water. The water is ready. At 23 years old, Chiamaka had never fetched water herself, not once, not ever. She stepped outside, her wrapper loosely tied around her waist, and the morning sun caught her face in a way that made even the harshest critic pause. Beauty, undeniable, almost criminal beauty, radiated from her like heat from a flame. But beauty, as the elders say, cannot cook soup. "Mama, is the water warm enough?" Chiamaka asked, examining her fingernails. Mama Unya, a woman whose back had begun to bend from years of doing everything for her only daughter, nodded weakly. "Yes, my daughter, I made sure it's just right for you." Across the fence, 3 women stood watching. Their eyes weren't kind. "That girl is 23 and still being bathed like a baby," one whispered. "I heard she doesn't even know how to light a stove," another added, shaking her head. "Beauty without sense is like a gold ring in a pig's nose," the eldest said, loud enough for Mama Unya to hear. But Mama Unya had heard it all before. For 18 years, she had shielded her daughter from every hardship, every responsibility, every lesson that builds character. When Chiamaka was 5, she had almost drowned fetching water from the stream. From that day, Mama Unya swore never again. She would do everything. Her daughter would never suffer. What she didn't realize was that in protecting Chiamaka from pain, she had condemned her to something far worse: incompetence. Time moved forward, as it always does, indifferent to human folly. The day Amecha arrived in Umori, the village seemed to hold its breath. He was a carpenter from the neighboring town of Amecha, a man whose hands built homes and whose reputation was spotless. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that spoke of integrity, Amecha had come to work on Chief Okonkwo's new mansion. And then he saw her. Chiamaka was walking past the market, her head wrapper brilliant yellow against her dark skin, her steps slow and deliberate like a queen who had nowhere urgent to be. She wasn't carrying anything, of course she wasn't, but she didn't need to. Her beauty carried itself. Amecha's heart skipped a beat. "Who is that?" he asked the man working beside him. "Ah, that one," his co-worker laughed bitterly. "That is Chiamaka, the most beautiful girl in Umori and the most useless." "Useless?" Amecha frowned. "How can you say such a thing about a woman you don't know?" "Oh, but we know her, my brother. Ask anyone. She cannot cook, she cannot clean, she cannot even bathe herself without her mother's help. Her beauty is her only skill, and beauty, my friend, does not sweep floors." But Amecha was not listening anymore. His eyes were fixed on Chiamaka, and his heart had already made a decision his mind would soon regret. Love, they say, is blind, but sometimes it is also foolish. Within 3 months, Amecha had convinced himself that Chiamaka was simply misunderstood. Perhaps she had never been given the chance to learn. Perhaps all she needed was a patient husband, a loving home, and the opportunity to grow. He ignored the warnings from his mother, his friends, even the village priest who pulled him aside and said, "My son, do not marry a woman who has never known struggle. She will not survive the storms of life." But Amecha was determined, and Chiamaka, dazzled by his attention and the promise of a comfortable life, agreed to marry him. The wedding was magnificent. The whole village came, not because they believed in the union, but because they wanted to see how long it would last. Chiamaka wore white lace and smiled like a bride from a Nollywood film. Amecha beamed with pride. Mama Unya cried, not from joy, but from a fear she couldn't name. "Take care of my daughter," she whispered to Amecha as she handed Chiamaka over. "She is delicate." "I will, Ma," Amecha promised. "I will love her and teach her." The first week was bliss. Amecha was too enchanted by his beautiful wife to notice that the dishes weren't washed, that the floors weren't swept, that dinner was never ready. The second week, reality crept in. "Chiamaka, my love," Amecha said gently one evening, returning home exhausted from work. "I'm very hungry. Is the food ready?" Chiamaka looked up from where she sat, plaiting her hair. "I was waiting for you to come back so we could cook together." Amecha blinked. "Cook together?" "Yes, now I don't know how to cook jollof rice. You can teach me." A knot formed in Amecha's stomach. He went into the kitchen. The pot was exactly where he had left it that morning. The yam he'd brought home 3 days ago was beginning to rot. The sink was piled with unwashed plates. "Chiamaka," he said slowly, trying to keep his voice calm, "have you not done anything all day?" She tilted her head, genuinely confused. "I swept the parlor." He looked. There were still crumbs on the floor from breakfast. That night Amecha cooked for both of them, and the next night, and the night after that. Weeks turned into months. The house began to smell. Chiamaka stopped bathing regularly. After all, Mama Yunya wasn't there to prepare her water. Her hair became matted. Her clothes went unwashed. The neighbors began to talk, louder this time, no longer whispering. And then, Chiamaka became pregnant. Amecha's hope flickered briefly. Perhaps motherhood would awaken something in her. Perhaps the responsibility of a child would change everything. But destiny, it seemed, had other plans. The baby came on a rainy September night, his cries piercing through the darkness like a prophet announcing judgment. They named him Chiamaka, God has done well, but as the weeks passed, it became clear that God's work was far from finished. Chiamaka stared at the screaming infant like he was a stranger's burden. Her breasts were full, her body exhausted, but her spirit was emptier than the cooking pots in her kitchen. She had imagined motherhood would be like her wedding day, beautiful, celebrated, admired. Instead, it was sleepless nights, dirty diapers, and a hunger that gnawed at her stomach because she still didn't know how to cook a proper meal. "Chiamaka, the baby is crying," Amecha called from the workshop behind their house, where he was trying to finish a wardrobe order to feed his family. "Silence!" He dropped his tools and rushed inside. Baby Chiamaka was lying in his own waste, his small face red with fury and neglect. Chiamaka sat on the bed, staring at the wall, her wrapper stained and her hair uncombed for weeks. Time stood still. Amecha's hands trembled as he lifted his son, cleaned him, and held him close. He looked at his wife, this woman he had chosen against all warnings, this beauty he had believed he could save, and saw nothing but emptiness staring back. "Chiamaka," he whispered, his voice breaking, "what is happening to you, to us?" "I'm tired," she mumbled. "We are all tired," his voice rose, shocking even himself. "But we still do what must be done. I work all day and come home to cook, to clean, to care for our child while you sit like a statue. Is this the life you want? Is this the mother you want to be?" Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were tears of self-pity, not understanding. "You don't know how hard it is for me. I never learned these things. My mother always." "Your mother ruined you," the words exploded from Amecha's mouth like thunder. "And I was a fool to think I could undo 18 years of damage." The neighbors heard everything. By morning, the story had spread through Umori like palm wine spilling from a broken calabash. "That beautiful Chiamaka has become a madwoman in her own house," they said. "Her husband does everything while she sits and stares. Even the baby is suffering. You can hear him crying all night. Beauty without character is a curse, not a blessing." Months crawled by like wounded animals. Amecha grew thinner, his eyes hollow from carrying the weight of 3 lives on shoulders built for only one. He hired a neighbor's daughter to help with the baby during the day, paying her with money meant for food. He stopped attending village meetings because he was ashamed. His friends stopped visiting because the smell of neglect that hung over his house was too thick to bear. And Chiamaka, She withered like a flower planted in concrete. Her legendary beauty began to fade, not from age, but from the rot of idleness. Her skin grew dull, her eyes lost their sparkle. The village that once envied her now pitied her, and pity is far more bitter than jealousy. One Friday evening, Amecha returned home and stopped at the doorway. His heart, that foolish, hopeful heart, finally broke clean in two. The house was in chaos. Baby Chiamaka, now 8 months old, was crawling through spilled Gary on the floor. Chiamaka was asleep on the couch, her mouth open, oblivious to the disaster around her. The stench of spoiled food and unwashed bodies made his stomach turn. He had tried, God knows he had tried. That night, after putting his son to sleep and scrubbing the floors himself, Amecha sat down and wrote a letter. His hand shook as he formed each word, but his resolve was iron. Chiamaka, I married you because I believed love could conquer all things. I was wrong. Love without responsibility is a house built on sand. I cannot continue to be both husband and wife, father and mother. I cannot raise our son in this environment of decay. I am leaving, not because I don't love you, but because I love myself and our child too much to let us all drown. Perhaps one day you will understand that beauty is not enough. Perhaps one day you will learn what I could not teach you. I pray that day comes before it is too late. Amecha. He placed the note on the table, kissed his sleeping son's forehead, and walked out into the night. He didn't take the baby. He knew Chiamaka would have to return to her mother, and there, at least, Chiamaka would be fed. When Chiamaka woke the next morning, the silence was different. It took her several minutes to realize what was missing. She called out, Amecha. Nothing. She stumbled through the house, panic rising in her chest. His clothes were gone, his tools were gone, only the letter remained, and as she read it, reality crashed down on her like a roof collapsing. She was alone. For the first time in her life, there was no one to fetch her water, no one to cook her food, no one to shield her from consequences. Her son began to cry, hungry and wet, and she realized with horror that she didn't even know how to prepare his pap properly. 3 days passed. The food in the house ran out. Baby Chiamaka's cries grew weaker. Chiamaka's pride crumbled like dried clay. With her son tied to her back and shame wrapped around her like a burial shroud, she walked the path back to her mother's compound. The villagers watched in silence. Some shook their heads, others whispered prayers. No one helped. Mama Yunya opened her door and saw what her love had created, a broken woman child carrying an innocent baby, both suffering from her years of misguided protection. Mama, please, Chiamaka sobbed. Help me, I don't know what to do. Mama Yunya's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steel. Come inside, but know this, I will feed you and the baby tonight, but starting tomorrow, if you want to eat, you will cook. If you want clean clothes, you will wash them. The time for pity is over. The time for learning has come, whether you like it or not. Chiamaka collapsed on the floor, weeping. Fate had tightened its grip, and this time there was no escape. The real transformation was about to begin, and it would hurt far more than any physical pain she had ever known. The first morning was war. Mama Yunya woke Chiamaka before the cock crowed, her voice sharp as a new blade. Get up. If you want to feed your son, you must first learn to feed yourself. Chiamaka's body ached. Her pride ached more. She stumbled into the kitchen where her mother had laid out cassava, a knife, and a grater. Peel it, grate it. We will make fufu, Mama Yunya said, her arms folded across her chest. Chiamaka picked up the knife like it was a serpent. Her hands, soft and unused to labor, trembled. The first cut was clumsy. The second drew blood. She cried out, dropping the knife. Blood washes away, Mama Yunya said without moving. Hunger does not. Continue. Through tears and pain, Chiamaka peeled one cassava root. It took her an hour to do what her mother could do in 5 minutes. By the time she finished grating, her knuckles were raw and bleeding. The fufu she pounded was lumpy and embarrassing, but when she fed it to baby Chiamaka mixed with soup her mother had made, and he ate hungrily, something small stirred in her chest. It wasn't pride, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. The village watched her fall from grace with cruel satisfaction. When she went to fetch water from the community tap, women who once envied her beauty now laughed openly. "I see the queen now, carrying water like the rest of us. Where is your husband, Chiamaka? Did your beauty not keep him? They say she doesn't even know how to bathe herself. Can you imagine?" Each word was a stone, and they buried her beneath their weight. But she kept walking, kept carrying, kept trying, because baby Chiamaka's survival depended on it. Weeks turned into months. Chiamaka burned stew, she oversalted soup, she washed clothes until her hands cracked and bled, she swept floors until her back screamed in protest. Every task that others did without thinking was a mountain she had to climb with bleeding hands. But slowly, painfully, humiliatingly slowly, she began to learn. One day, 6 months after Amecha had left, Chiamaka was washing clothes by the stream when she overheard 2 women talking. "Auntie Ngozi's food stall needs help. She said she's getting too old to manage alone." Chiamaka's heart jumped. She approached the woman, her head bowed respectfully. "Please, Ma, where can I find Auntie Ngozi?" The woman looked her up and down, recognition and mockery dancing in her eyes. "You, what can you possibly do at a food stall?" Chiamaka swallowed her pride. It tasted like ash. "I can learn, Ma. Please just tell me where to find her." That afternoon, Chiamaka stood before Auntie Ngozi, a round woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. "So you're the lazy beauty everyone talks about," Ngozi said, stirring a massive pot of egusi soup. "Why should I hire you?" "Because I need to feed my son," Chiamaka said quietly, "and because I promise to work harder than anyone you've ever hired." Ngozi studied her for a long moment. "Your hands are soft, your back is weak, you will cry and want to quit." "I've already cried oceans, Ma. I have no tears left, only determination." Something in Chiamaka's eyes must have convinced her, because Ngozi nodded. "You start tomorrow, 4 in the morning. If you're late even once, don't bother coming back." Chiamaka was never late, not once. She peeled mountains of vegetables until her fingers were permanently stained. She stood over hot fires until her face glistened with sweat and smoke. She scrubbed pots until her arms felt like they would fall off. And slowly, she learned not just to cook, but to cook well. "Taste this," Ngozi would say, thrusting a spoon at her. "What is missing?" At first, Chiamaka couldn't tell, but her palate developed, her instincts sharpened, her hands grew quick and confident. The woman who once couldn't boil water now prepared jollof rice that made customers close their eyes in satisfaction. A year passed, then 2. Chiamaka saved every kobo she earned. She rented a small space near the motor park and opened New Dawn Kitchen. The name wasn't accidental, it was a declaration. The old Chiamaka had died in shame and hunger. This new woman was being born in fire and determination. Her food became famous. People who once mocked her now lined up to buy her cooking. She hired 2 girls to help her, and she taught them with patience she had earned through suffering. "Never let anyone tell you that you cannot change," she told them. "I was the most useless woman in Umori. Now I feed the village. Transformation is painful, but it is possible." News travels fast in small villages, faster still when the story is remarkable. One afternoon, as Chiamaka was closing her stall, a familiar figure appeared in the distance. Her heart recognized him before her eyes did. Amecha. He was thinner, older, with grey starting to pepper his hair. He stood watching her from across the road, as if afraid to come closer. Their eyes met, and time stood still. Chiamaka wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward him, her head high. She was no longer the woman he had left. Her hands were calloused now, her body stronger, her spirit forged in the fire of consequence. "Amecha," she said softly. "Chiamaka," his voice broke on her name. "I heard, I couldn't believe. Is it true? Did you really?" "Yes," she said simply. "I learned, I changed. Not for you, I want you to know that. I changed for my son and for myself." Tears ran down his face. I'm so sorry I left." "You did what you had to do," Chiamaka interrupted, "and it saved my life. If you had stayed, I would still be useless, still be drowning. You leaving was the mercy I needed, even though it felt like death." They stood in silence, the weight of lost years and hard-won wisdom hanging between them. "Can we," Amecha started, "can we try again, slowly?" Chiamaka smiled, but it was a smile earned through suffering. "We can try, but know this, I am not the woman you married. I am stronger now, I am wiser. I will never again depend on anyone to do for me what I can do for myself." "That," Amecha said, reaching for her hand, "is exactly the woman I want to build a life with." 6 months later, Umori witnessed another wedding. Smaller this time, quieter, but infinitely more real. Chiamaka wore blue instead of white, a color of wisdom, not innocence. Baby Chiamaka, now a bright-eyed 3-year-old, stood between his parents as they renewed their vows. This time, the village celebrated not because of beauty, but because of triumph. New Dawn Kitchen continued to thrive. Chiamaka became a mentor to young girls, teaching them that beauty fades, but skill endures, that no one is beyond redemption, and that the hardest work we ever do is the work of transforming ourselves. Her story became legend, not as a warning of what happens to lazy beauties, but as proof that it is never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button for African Tales by Niel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.